When I think of the elite team since I started following the sport 10, 11 years ago, I think of the early Enrique days or later Enrique days of kind of MSN, maybe a Ronaldo, a Real Madrid team, probably two Man City teams, that 17, 18, 18, 19 team, maybe that 22, 23 team. Um, the 18-19 Liverpool team. Those are probably four or five of the best teams I've seen. So when I say that PSG is up there with those teams, it really is a tremendous feat. And so heading into this semifinal, Club World Cup semifinal against Real Madrid, a Real Madrid team that for one is lacking Trent Alexander-Arnold and Dean Huijsen. But for two, it is still playing this whole entire brand new style of football, brand new philosophy under Xabi Alonso. I very early on had my reservations about what Real Madrid could do, but actually for the first 15 or 20 minutes, I don't think Real Madrid played that bad. There was a couple good, almost counterattacking chances that Real Madrid and Mbappe were kind of creating on their own, just out of nowhere. But at the same time, when you're having Antonio Rudiger and Raul Asensio essentially just turning around and kicking the ball into the back of their own net to give yourselves a 2-0 deficit, it just doesn't make things any better. PSG go and get a third goal in about the 24th minute. And that's just when you began to see the dominance that PSG really has. And it lies in a number of aspects. I think the first one to mention, and probably an underrated one, is their defense. I mean, they were able to neutralize one of the game's best, game breakers in Kylian Mbappe. I mean, you have to look no further than that 2022 World Cup final, down 2-0 against Argentina. Pulled them right back, almost won the game for France on a couple of occasions. So when you have a player like that who's been able to do it so much at PSG and somewhat at Real Madrid, to be able to take him out of that game so many times tonight, it does flex a real defensive prowess I don't think is talked about enough. But you move into that midfield and certainly into that attack, and it just oozes class. And there's a couple points I want to talk about real quick. The first being the counter movement system that PSG has. It's just an elite ability. Just a number 9, an example of it would be a number 9 kind of dropping into the midfield. Just have a fullback, the near side fullback, just sprinting right up across him. And what that does, it just kind of sets off the defensive line because you have one center back pushing up, but then a fullback has to drop back. It's just things like that. They'll do it 100 times a game. It's not just with a center forward or a winger or a center forward or a right back, but just even with certain midfielders. And just their positional ability in general with this PSG team. I mean, you can pause the game probably about 42 times during tonight's match and just see Nuno Mendes and Achraf Hakimi playing as almost number 10s inside wingers a number of times throughout the night. So that kind of combined with just some elite midfield ability from Vitinha. He's probably my favorite player, my second favorite player on that PSG team to watch. It almost made it unfair heading into the night. And that kind of brings me on nicely onto my next point between Xabi Alonso and Luis Enrique. This may come off as a little bit of a stupid statement, but I actually don't believe this is the worst ever result for Xabi Alonso. And there's a lot of context I think has to be applied to that. The biggest being this. A lot of people think that PSG team really started to click when they came back and they beat City 4-2 in what was a must-win game for them to qualify for the Champions League. But to me, it really happened in that was a round of 16 loss to Liverpool in the first leg when Liverpool went there. Harvey Elliott snatched the last-minute winner, 1-0. Despite losing that game, that Liverpool team was absolutely dismantled. And that just wasn't any Liverpool team. That was a Liverpool team that was, by far the best in the Premier League. Mohamed Salah was firing on all cylinders. I know they lost the Carabao Cup final, but that was, without doubt, at that point, being heralded as the best team in Europe. And I think that day, despite Liverpool getting the winner, that was when you really started to think this PSG team could be for real. And since then, they've just looked absolutely unstoppable. So for Xabi Alonso, a still relatively young manager, this is his third or fourth year coaching at the top level, and 7 games out Real Madrid. This isn't that bad of a game for him. For some Real Madrid players, on the other hand, which I'll get into, there could be better days. The first one I want to talk about was Kylian Mbappe. I actually don't think Mbappe had that bad of a game. there were a couple instances where he kind of had to make his own magic in the early portions, and I think he was a bit of a fulcrum for what little success Real Madrid had. I do want to mention, though, there's that one point where Kavica Kvaratskhelia drops all the way back, wins the ball from Mbappe, and then just bombards forward, nutmegs Real Madrid midfielder, I think. And then to me, at that point, all I was going through my mind is, the famous clip of Luis Enrique talking to Mbappe, telling him, Michael Jordan's your inspiration. Michael Jordan tracked back on defense every single time. That was an attempt to motivate Mbappe just to try a little bit harder on the defensive end while he was at PSG. So to see Kvaratskhelia do that, it was a little bit, I don't know, it's maybe I'm the only person who thought of that, but I thought it was a little bit of a watershed moment. But Vinicius. Now, this is such an interesting time for the career of Vinicius. Now, I'm not trying to hate on him. I know he's getting, way too much hate right now. But if you're being viewed as someone who's a top 5, top 10 player in the world, these are the types of games that even if you don't get a goal, even if you don't get an assist, even if your team loses, you need to create that little bit of an impact. Kylian Mbappe didn't have a great game today, but he was good enough to where no blame should really be going on to him. Vinny needs to have that type of impact for Real Madrid, even in his off games, even in his off seasons. He still needs to be there, and you're going, maybe he didn't get a goal, maybe he didn't get an assist, but you can see he tried to create something. And I'm not saying Vinny didn't try. Obviously, he did. But it's just when I look at him kind of compared to Mbappe, and I was saying, maybe not everything was working with Mbappe, but, he was trying again, and again. I just didn't necessarily see that from Vinicius today. And it doesn't help that obviously he was going up against, I believe, Hakimi on the right side, whoever he was going up against. They're playing for the best team on earth right now. So that obviously doesn't help the situation for Vinicius. But it wasn't that long ago this guy was, being robbed for the Ballon d'Or. So to see his level drop off, I know last season wasn't his great season, but personally I don't think he's necessarily picked it up as much. Especially today he didn't. It does kind of continue this downward stalk of Vinicius right now. Now, all that awaits PSG in claiming a Club World Cup title is what should be an interesting final against Chelsea. Now, this Chelsea team has debatably been the best team throughout this Club World Cup, and what I've been impressed with Enzo Maresca is the fact that there are certain points throughout last season where things didn't go well, and he was able to recover. I'm thinking back to kind of that game against Nottingham Forest, last day of the season. Chris Wood had a number of chances to score. Nottingham Forest were kind of putting on all this pressure, but Chelsea were able just to hold. Against Man United the week before, any previous Chelsea team would have tied or even lost that game, but this one was able just to hold firm and eke out a 1-0 win. Those types of performances do deserve credit from Maresca. And if they do get an early goal against PSG, I could see this becoming a real contest. The problem is that if they don't, if they go down 1 or 2 early, and in all honesty, I'm not convinced by the Chelsea defense. I'm especially not convinced by Robert Sanchez in goal. So if Chelsea create a mistake for themselves, kind of like you saw with what Real Madrid did today, this could quickly kind of turn into a replay of that match between Chelsea and PSG. But if Chelsea are able to get an early goal, and they do have those kind of game winner players in Cole Palmer, João Pedro's obviously had a fantastic debut. Liam Delap's going to be eager for a goal. There's a number of players kind of in this Chelsea team who all have their reasons onto why they need to perform on Sunday. So if they are able to get that early goal, then maybe an upset could be brewing, but overall, when I see this PSG team, I can't call them one of the best I've ever seen and think that they're going to lose to this Chelsea team. I just don't believe it. I do think PSG are going to get a win, maybe 3-1, 4-2. I don't think it will be as bad as a game as today was in terms of excitement, but I do ultimately think PSG are going to lift the Club World Cup. But anyway, guys, that'll do it from me today. My last video did so well, and I'm so appreciative for it. And so I just ask for all you guys to please like, share, comment, subscribe to my channel. Let me know if there's any feedback you all may have for me, and I'll talk to you all soon. God bless.